On this talk, we're going to talk about the latest and wildest IoT attacks I've observed over the last year. Specifically, it was starting about recent years, but just last year would have been enough to make a hell of a talk. So with that in mind, let's dive in. So first about me, my name is Barak Sternberg. I'm a founder at Wildpointer, a security services company. Also have this funny title of hacker in residence at venture capital, Wild Ventures. I was offered at Sentinel-1 Labs and speaker at conferences and love sharing knowledge and working with people towards that. I did my master's in algorithms in computer science, and I love doing research from algorithms to analyze malware in the wild and much more. I'm also a DJ and party lover, so make sure you check out my Mixcloud afterwards. And that's it. So with that in mind, IoT attacks. So IoT attacks are anywhere, literally anywhere, increased over the years so much. So why attackers are threatening and targeting IoT infrastructure? So first, they possess so many critical systems inside of them. So it increases the probability for more damage, more probability to payouts because it's a critical infrastructure and you need it to be recovered fast. So maybe ransomware attackers thinking about that as well. Critical damage, also nation state involved, of course, if they want to harm some damage. Second, it's harder to detect and protect. They have these unique environments and architectures. It can also give initial compromise, initial access to organization. For example, the IoT router, VPN servers, or many devices like that can give you to enter the environment, the organization, and the scale. Many devices have the same configuration all over again because you don't really know how to configure everything on the deep inside of these IoT devices. So many of these are completely the same environment perspective. So what are attackers using that for? So first, deploying ransomware, double extortions, many stuff like that. Deploying DDoS attacks, stealing source code, technological source code, and much more, crypto mining, damaging critical infrastructure. We're going to see that and much more. So according to Kaspersky report, more than 1 billion attempts to infection has been done on the first half of 2021. And the most targeted industry, not surprising, critical manufacturers, large companies, and facilities. Hundreds of CVEs as well. So our first wild story is going to be about, well, yes, the Ukrainian invasion by Russia, but specifically on the cyber warfare behind all of that, and the Indestroyer too. So recap, the attack starting targeted banks, government entities, internet satellites, energy providers. Actually, what was critical was targeted. So they tried to target anything. Specifically, when I mean them, I mean Russians to the Ukrainian critical infrastructures, and they tried to disable electricity. Well, fortunately, only tried. They disabled satellite internet connectivity. They damaged and wiped critical infrastructure data for making it slow recover. And they used so many different malwares developed for the first time seen there. Indestroyer 2, which was, I will discuss it much more later, which was able to control IoT devices, the power grid and substations to make them unavailable and damage them. Wipers, multiple OS versions, and also they disabled the services inside this PC. So whenever they reach to some computer network, they would disable all communication outgoing and ingoing. So for example, if it's a Linux server, it would be much harder to recover, gain control of the system, and try to recover the damages being done currently. That's the way the wipers would work. Like disable communications, wipe all the system, and then it's harder to get back. So a little bit intro about the group assumed to be behind it, the Syndrome APT group. They assumed to be the part of the GRU, wanted by the FBI as well, Unit 74455, multiple attacks since 2007, causing blackout in Ukraine, DDoS, ransomware, and much, much more. So on these scenarios, the main efforts were focusing on, first, the banking Ukraine governments, usually with intention to make the most harm they could do, using the caddy wiper and the hermetic wiper. The caddy wiper is the hard disk wiper for the Windows. The hermetic wiper was another version doing that, and also they're using Linux wipers to maliciously harm and destroy hard disks in Solaris, in Oracle environments, in Linux servers, and much more. Energy providers were attacked as well, of course, also by the in-destroyers and the caddy wiper in a second version. So much attack has been done concurrently. The first line of attacks I want to speak about is the wipers themselves. So the first caddy wiper was interesting piece of malware, recursively iterating the years, overwriting maximum of 10 megabytes, probably to make it faster. Remember, keep in mind the main intention was to just make your computer unavailable for the longest period they could, to make the most damage. They use write file with zero, just Cisco write file with zeros. They also rewrite the old partition table, the MBR and the GPT to zero again. The second version has its own loader. I don't know if it's a kind of a trolling mechanism, but they use the patched IDA debugger binary. They use the Win32 remote binary from the plugin from IDA and patched it with their own shellcode loader. They use also a key and a shellcode path as an argument to decrypt the shellcode on the fly, and also a time to execute. And actually that's an interesting point, because that's the way they try to avoid scheduled tasks. So they didn't use scheduled tasks in the second version, but just using this time to execute the argument and execute it after some time probably has passed. Okay, the Linux wipers were using like living off the land kind of techniques, the shred binaries. They use DD like to completely destroy hard drives. They do it parallelly. They disable also the communication, as I told you, and they also try to remove systemd unit configurations to make sure no auto reloads are happening. So this is part of these bash scripts inside. So this was the wipers. What about the in-destroyer itself? So timeline speaking, we don't know much because not much was actually published out there, but Russia invades Ukraine on the 24th of February. Until the end, it is presumed that Syndrome APT compromised some energy facility with high voltage substations, and the attack starts actually on the 8th of April. So when the attack is starting, they try to do a scheduled task. It is immediately actually, as we know, detected and removed. Only a couple of days after the Ukrainian state informs about it, and one day after, actually the FBI, the NSA, many groups like that, actually inform about a new threat, about a new malware that would be used, might want to be used, called Pipe Dream, which can actually have much more damage. Fortunately, we didn't see any evidence for it in the wild. So the industry, to just recall it, goes way back to 2016, caused a blackout for an hour in the Ukrainian capital, had this cool ability to speak IEC 104, IEC 110, OPCOA, many like kind of PLC, ICS protocols. It directly controls switches and circuit breakers. I think one of the most amazing point about this attack is that they were trying to maliciously harm the protection relays. So they used this 0 day to destroy the protection relays, close and shut down, switch off all the electricity devices, and then when you manually open up these electricity devices, all your system would break up because you don't have protection relays. So they used a 0 days, specifically here, DCV, DOS packet to Siemens, to crush the protection relays inside their system. And you can see actually or it's from the beautiful Dragos paper. On the left, you can see a crashed DOS packet, crashed device after sending this DOS packet. This was the Indestroyer, the first Indestroyer, and now we go a little bit high level in a sense for electric grids operations. So like in a deep kind of sense, we have the SCADA clients controlling this PLC and stuff like that. They usually speak, well, sometimes they speak with TCP/IP connection. This is just an extension to the real ICS protocol, which is IEC 101. So the SCADA clients communicate with the router, the IEC 104 router, which actually transfer and convert the communication itself into the IEC 101 protocol and being sent to the RTUs. So on the third bullet here, you can see the RTUs, which are directly connected in a sense to the substations, to the electrical substations. And therefore, from controlling the SCADA system, you can infiltrate and cause damage to the RTUs. Cool. So in much more higher level, this is how probably a templated kind of electricity energy facility would look like. So an energy facility would compromise from many composed from many things inside. So the HMI, the energy in the engineering workstation, OPC servers, much more. Many of them working again as TCP/IP connection through the router to the slaves, the RTUs. Some communicate freely with the PLC, the OPC, with its own protocol to the PLCs themselves. And what the attackers tried to do in the first Indestroyer, also in the second, didn't manage that successfully in the second, fortunately. They tried to attack any of them. They tried to use any of them to shut down the facility, and not just shutting it down, but to damage it for the longest they could. So the original intent by the awesome asset Blackett talk this year was that the original intent was to de-energize the power lines, deny operators visibility and control. This was the original intent. In the new version, they were also trying to wipe all the hard drives and all the hard disks. So even if you could like get control again of your system, of your SCADA, it would be much harder to recover and make control again, because you don't have all the system you need. You don't have the binaries. They disabled the protection layers and waited. Waited for what? For manual operation. Manual operation is done, and then physical damage would cause because the protection relays are now going to be disabled. They actually involved it with more things, but it's, if you want to read it, it's more in the asset paper. They try to switch on and off multiple times of the substations to make abruptions in the power grids themselves. So auto shutdown of specific substations will occur. That's an astonishing way to do that. So in Destroyer 2, specifically reverse engineering in Destroyer 2 shows us many interesting things. They were doing task scheduling that was detected. The logs, debugs log anywhere, like a little bit obscure, but kind of understandable. Non-privileged account was needed, so no admin account, because they were speaking through the internet, like the LAN communication through the router themselves. So no admin access was needed. You can actually see that on the XML schema, which is the correspond to this task scheduler on the right here. So this was in Destroyer 2, and its way of operation, dynamically speaking, we can see here how it works. So as we know, there are two samples targeting around 11 substations with this TCP/IP IEC 104 protocol. They knew from before everything they want to do, and this is a key point. They knew what addresses they want to target. They knew the devices. They knew the IOAs. They knew internal physical things they want to attack. They had this knowledge. It's like they had this routine looping all over again, just trying to make the things their own way. They actually, funny thing is that they don't even kind of listen to the responses, which is more like giving you the feeling that they didn't really need that. They had all the assumptions, they had all the knowledge they need before. So you can see the packet sniff from the in Destroyer 2 and this way of work, just shutting down things on and off correspondingly to what they want to do. So I don't know, like, we don't know, sorry, we don't know specifically what was the purpose in every single RTU on and off switch, but we for sure know that some of them were trying to target it by kind of island kind of attacks. Just on and off would cause harm because the much things would be in the system, overuse of the system, and hence would make crashing happens. The off switches were probably for the protection relays to make them not working. So again, when the manually turn on switch would turn on, an harm would cause because the protection relays protect you from high voltage and shortages and stuff like that. Okay, so this is about the Destroyer 2. An interesting TTPs attackers used. They enumerate rules, domain GPU rules, and domain using non-admin required technique with ADCI adapter in PowerShell. They're doing scheduled tasks without task scheduler. They have prepared passwords and IoT addresses. And they're doing this cool Mimikatz, no Mimikatz technique to dump credentials with the mini dump technique. Really cool technique actually to use, kind of, again, living off the land kind of technique to get credentials and passwords. Okay, so this was our first story. Our next story is going to be about, well, the unfortunate attack about the Ireland hospitals. So the HSE attack on 2021 started as an attack about the whole public health institution in Ireland. The HSE comprised of more than 35 hospitals, around 70,000 employees. The high-level attack is quite simple. Phishing, malicious Excel being opened by employee. Attackers are inside 8 weeks in the network, lateral moving, IT ignoring alerts, big mess out there, and one Conti-ransomware starts up at a single moment. So the high-level attack story, you can see the image here as well. The phishing opportunity gave a chance to the attackers to do what they want. The attacker just wander around the network for more than 8 weeks. They deploy eventually the ransomware, but it was much after they compromised so many systems and servers in the network. So on the 19th of May, the CEO of HSE is going out as a press release, and he says that, well, attack has occurred. We don't know what data was taken. We know some data was taken, and we won't pay. That's not a good PR release. It's really make many people like unclear and unsure of what is happening really behind the hood. And it makes sense because neither did they. They didn't know anything almost as far as I know at that moment. So the timeline is, again, so phishing email clicked on March 18, open up, the Excel file in the email. On the end of March, the attacker execute Cobalt Strike and Mimikatz out of the box. The AV, amazing AV, monitor mode style, doesn't block anything. Great job. On the 7th of May, look the timeline. It's like there've been so many time in the network, so much time in the network. The attacker first gained admin privileges, probably with known password. So the attacker goes home, looking over the dark web, finding the password, and go back and just enter the password. Amazing. On the 8th, the attacker can continue lateral movement, exploit more servers in more hospitals. On the 10th, again, attacker execute Cobalt strikes at one hospital. So it executes the Cobalt strike. The antivirus detects that it doesn't run in monitor mode, and quarantine fails. Like, well, it's a mess. The whole story is about really showing here that the cybersecurity maturity level was not enough, was really, really not enough. On the 10th of May, one hospital SOC actually noticed again Cobalt strike alert. So eventually the SOC team get involved. They asking the security provider whether they should be concerned, but the security provider says that, well, we removed the Cobalt strike from your PC, so the risk is low. What with other PCs, what with other networks, what with cleaning up the PC itself? Nothing. So the whole corresponding about the security was way bad in my perspective. Attacker, again, one day after attacker brute force domain passwords, it fails and then execute one day popular, one day successfully on the system, because systems were kind of a medical NIMI system, so no updates, many times no updates, so the system were really unupdated, antivirus rules and much more. I think one of the most astonishing things is that on the 13th of May, the security provider itself said to the SOC team, look, you have intrusion into your system. There are threat actors threatening your system, Cobalt strike, stuff, mimic, whatever. And you know what they did? They just restarted the servers. They just get to the server team and tell them, okay, we have been compromised, so let's do full-on restart. That's really bad. One more thing, it's all, by the way, it's all based on the PwC report, over 160 pages, amazing to read, so many conclusions, so many things to get from it and understand how we need to do better security. One hospital detects the attack, it resets all the password, do all things correctly, but it doesn't inform any other hospital. It doesn't inform any other systems, any other networks. So it protects itself, the hospital, but it doesn't help the others. They don't share the knowledge. On the 13th, they execute the ransomware with all the exploited hospitals. This is about the Conti-ransomware. So the Conti-ransomware encrypts file parallelly. It used the ChaCha8 symmetric encryption. It removed backups. It actually have this cool ability to encrypt remotely the backups in the Vim backups, but probably for more service backups as well. It removed backups also locally. It also look all over them. It also have this cool partial encryption feature to make it probably faster and avoidable and non-detectable in a sense. So it do encryption with jumps of 1 megabyte each, so it doesn't encrypt anything, it just encrypts part of it, but it will still doesn't help you to recover your systems, right? It's all it needs. It's all what it needs. Cool. So the impact was really bad. Many cancellations, CT, XRIs, X-ray, MRI appointments, and many more canceled because the IT system was interrupted. I think more than 20 hospitals infected. Also comments in the web which made me cry because like people waiting for treatments and then cybersecurity attack happens and they can't get the treatment. Eventually, the attacker, I don't know if they gain conscious, but they sent out the keys eventually because they tell them we don't pay. They send out the keys, but still it didn't help because it took so long to recover the whole systems. So in conclusion, more than 20 hospitals got impacted. Appointment and IT system got shut down. The hacker demanded initially $19 million, but sent out the keys nevertheless without payout. It took them 3 months to recover more than 1,000 servers and 1,000 different applications. Really bad attack. Estimated damages without even the payouts for the ransomware itself for more than $600 million as estimated out there. And also data leaks for 500 internal records and stuff. So the red flags and main takeaways from this is, well, configure your security tools, do updates. They didn't have new rules for the antivirus for more than 12 months. Like besides the thing that they use antivirus, they don't have EDRs. So like increase your cybersecurity maturity level. Get personnel and highly skilled personnel that can help you mitigate threats, prioritize, and prepare for the worst, prepare for the emergency, prepare for emergency plan, and communicate. With that in mind, we're going to our last attack. So our last attack is going to deal with the Colonial Oil Pipeline Attack. The Colonial Oil Pipeline Attack is a really interesting attack. It starts with, well, Colonial who? So Colonial is actually one of the biggest oil companies, which is a part of the Colonial Group. You can actually see here in the map where the pipeline is actually moving forward, and you can see that around 50% of the fuel in the East Coast in the United States is using this pipeline. So this is a really critical infrastructure. If these things get hurt, something really, really bad can go and happen. They are the largest pipeline system for refined oil. They transfer oil, probably also gas and fuel and much, much more. And on the 19th, they shut down their pipeline. So what's happening? Probably assumed to be the PC managing the Colonial pipeline got attacked by ransomware and attacked really bad, and they decided to minimize exposure, shut down their whole system. They were just using unused VPN password, unused VPN username and password. They found it in the dark web. They didn't have multi-factor authentication. That's it. That's all needed to infiltrate one of the huge systems, the huge critical infrastructure in the states responsible for the oil pipelines. That's really astonishing. Also, the Biden and the FBI was corresponding and involved immediately. So the FBI and Biden are really like mad right now, and they are in that point in time, they are really involved in all of that, working together with Colonial. On the 6th, the first intrusion is presumed to be data is stolen and also leaked at the dark web itself, and to convince them that the threat exists and to convince them to pay. On the 7th, the ransomware actually starts. The US government is involved in all of that. The pipeline is taken down to minimize the exposure, and a couple of hours later, they pay. So, supervised by the FBI, they pay around $4.4 million, 75 Bitcoin at the time, to these threat actors, supervised by the FBI. Remember that point, we'll come to that later. So, only 5 days after, the pipeline was fully restored. And like, if you take down a whole pipeline and it takes you 5 days to restore that, it can cause problems. It can cause real problems. So we'll talk about these problems a little bit later. Now I want to speak about the APT group. The APT group behind that is assumed to be kind of a Russian related group. Dark Side, Black Matter. Dark Side was the kind of the old name. The Black Matter is the new thing. They assume to work from Eastern Europe or Russia, operate as a ransomware as a service, so they can compile for you the binaries and the ransomware you need. If you give them the initial access, they can manage the operation behind the ransomware attacks themselves. You can see here an example of a node they leave. And interestingly enough, the way they work, the malware itself, you can see that they delete the shadow copies, the Windows shadow copies. They delete all the backup services as well. They query all these backup services and delete them one by one. And they use fast symmetric key encryption. They have their public key embedded inside the malware itself. So the private key is only in their server, in their side. And when they come into some PC and some computer, they generate randomly generated symmetric keys in a good manner. Back then it wasn't that good, but now it's a good manner. They encrypt these symmetric keys with the public key infrastructures and remove from the disk and delete all these symmetric key from the disk itself. That way they can encrypt really fast your hard drives and backups probably as well. Again, This was about this APT group. The impact was huge. Temporary fuel shortages along the east coast for 5 days. More than 70% of the filling stations were ran out of gas in areas from North Carolina to South Virginia. This was a really critical damage. Biden was actually involved and mentioned that in the news, responding to things and talking about it out there. One of the main things was happening is because the new cyber attack was happening, there was panic buying that led to more shortage, and also the gas prices were highest in years, $3 per gallon. So as I told you, remember that the FBI was also involved in that. So it was supervised by the FBI, and they were threatening them that we will take care of that. We will manage and we take care of that. And actually, that's kind of thing that happened. A couple of days after the payout and stuff like that, their whole servers went down. Some money was stolen, and one day after Biden was threatening them and stuff like that. So DarkSide probably did a messed up thing, messing up with the US government. So the aftermath of all this story is that on the 7th of June, look, it took time. It took a lot of time. They recovered 63 bitcoins, which at that point in time was only $2 million worth. The FBI assumed to be estimated as this amount, and they acquired the private keys for the wallets. We don't know how, but this is what assumed to happening. They also pawned their servers. Again, we don't know how and who. Also, there was one day after a congressional hearing about this attack, and it's really, really amazing to see how less knowledgeable, how much we don't have enough knowledge about these kind of threats, about these kind of scenarios. We can see that the CEO of Pipeline is saying out there in the news, we didn't know at the time of the attack, we didn't know the answer, whether the pipeline was actually changed. It's not just about the ransomware. What if someone was changing the pipeline, broke the pipeline, make the pipeline properties different, so I don't know, causing explosions to car going to fill the stuff, you know? So they really didn't know about that, but they were assuming that the DarkSide group won't do that. That's a nice assumption, but they really, really lack many data. They really lack this cybersecurity level that would help them to understand the threats. So the lessons learned from that and from the congressional hearing and all of that is do the basic, clear and use password, enable two-factor authentication, do backups, add on also data guarding, and much more. The second thing is that attacks will happen. It's all good. Attacks will happen. Prepare your emergency plans. Prepare your incident response plans. Mitigate the blast radius. Minimize this blast radius. Don't expect attacks won't happen. Don't expect the 100%. It's not viable. Also look over legacy entries. The legacy is the king sometimes for the attackers. Legacy systems, old user, old apps, fix them, update them, remove old users. Get the best out of each expert. The cybersecurity is so diverse. Raise your skill level, learn from many experts. Every expert in each field, learn from them from different ways. And of course, after all, increase your cybersecurity maturity level. Understand how to configure security tools. Understand how to educate your personnel. Increase the skilled personnel inside your system that working here with you. With that in mind, this concludes my last story about that. I want to thank you all for being with me here today. This is my Twitter you can follow, and my LinkedIn as well. Also, I have so many credits, and I'm to this giant responsible for so many public reports and tech reports concluded and being used over this talk. With that in mind, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barak, for that interesting presentation with some very serious topics. Any questions from the audience? Don't mind, Barak?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
So I saw the lessons learned slide, and if you could just go back to that,
Yeah.
I have a question related to this. So why isn't there a line called budget here? Because what we understand from all of these, incidents is that neither of those three, we could argue about the electricity sector, but not the hospital nor Colonial had cybersecurity budgets fitting their operating profile. So have you had any ideas, how it changed the cybersecurity budget being hacked and calling in NSA to, sort this out?
Yeah. So it's really interesting problem, and I think I can discuss about this problem forever. I think that one of the main challenges nowadays in cybersecurity areas is that how to really divide your budget corresponding to the attacks being out there and how to maximize your budget. I don't have a wise solution for that. I can say, the cliche things that increase your cybersecurity budget, but it doesn't work like that. I think that you need to involve it with plans, with probably someone that leads the efforts, that is knowledgeable and can measure the impact, measure the effectiveness of cybersecurity efforts done in your systems, corresponds to the threats and the attacks that you want to mitigate. So, for example, if I'm, I don't know, I have this website only for PR purposes, maybe I don't put so much effort into using this as the holy grail of securing this website. Prioritize your things. When you prioritize, you can make the most of your security budgets. But it's really, really hard thing to do. It's not an easy one, for sure.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Do you have any knowledge or idea about how Hungary's critical infrastructure is protected, or what shape it is at?
So about Hungary critical infrastructure.
Yes.
So yeah. If someone you want me to help protect it, well, maybe yes, but I don't have any knowledge specifically in regard to Hungary critical infrastructure. All of this info is based on public reports on me reverse engineering binaries and malwares in the wild, and reading a lot. This is like also a hobby for me. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Time for one more? Okay, we'll bring that to an end. Thanks, Barak. Great presentation.
Thank you very much.
Don't forget to listen into his Mixcloud.
Thank you very much.
And it's coffee break. I think the presentations start again at 11:15.